A photocopied form with the wrong signature on it. A hospital car park at 8 in the morning in May. And a woman who is about to find out that the worst decision of her marriage was made in a language she was never taught to speak.
We're continuing our Season 5 theme, Unmasked, the mental health conversations women aren't having. And this episode is called Postpartum and Fertility-Related Mental Health. Last week, on episode 6 of the 5th season of the Jasmine and Jay Show, we talked about people-pleasing, boundaries, and saying no. And what that episode actually uncovered was not a man who was too soft. It was a man who had turned yes into a currency and had been quietly spending it for 9 years on a sister nobody knew existed, on a father's debts, on a friend who took $9,000 and vanished, and on his wife's career, which he protected without ever telling her he was protecting it. By the end of it, Ronke had slid a piece of paper across a hospital canteen table at 4 in the morning, and Bisi was reading a signature that was hers on a form she had never seen. And there were 2 lessons in it that I want you to carry into tonight. The first, a yes you never wanted to give does not disappear. It gets paid for later, by somebody, and usually by the person standing closest to you. The second, a boundary you never say out loud turns into a secret, and a secret always protects the person keeping it more than the person it claims to protect. If you missed it, please go back and listen or watch, because it sets up everything we're talking about today.
This week's episode is called Postpartum and Fertility-Related Mental Health, and we are pulling the mask all the way off. Tonight, Bisi walks into a hospital records office and asks a question she is not ready to have answered. She finds out who held the pen, she finds out why May mattered, and she finds out that the 11 weeks of her life she still cannot account for, the 11 weeks after Timmy that she filed away under strength, were being watched the whole time by someone who never once said the word out loud.
And here is why this one is for you. Because you are the woman who went back to work at 5 weeks and got told you were amazing. You are the woman who has a fertility appointment in her calendar under a fake name so nobody at work asks. You are the woman whose body has been a project, a battleground, and a disappointment, sometimes all in the same week, and you have never once said that sentence to another human being. This is the conversation nobody is having out loud, because we have decided that motherhood and the fight to get there are supposed to be quiet.
Welcome back to the Jasmine and Jay Show, the space where we say the quiet parts out loud. I'm Jasmine.
And I'm Jay. And we pick up exactly where we left you, 4:20 in the morning. Bisi is holding a photocopy. Ronke has just refused to tell her who signed it. And Bisi does the thing that people in shock do, which is she becomes extremely practical. She does not cry. She does not shout at Ronke. She folds the paper in half, puts it in her bag, and sits in the hospital car park until 7:50 when the patient records office opens. 8.5 hours of her husband on a ward upstairs, and she does not go up. She sits in a Volvo with the engine off and waits for a door to unlock.
And when it does, she is the first person through it. And she does not ask nicely, Jay. She has done 9 years of asking nicely. She puts the photocopy on the counter and she says, I need to know who witnessed this. There is a woman behind the desk who has been doing this job for 11 years, and she looks at the form and then she looks at Bisi's face and she recognizes something. She goes away for 4 minutes. She comes back with a name, a date, and a time. 8:15, Tuesday morning, May.
And Bisi knows that week. She knows it the way you know your own passport number. That was the Manchester week. 3 days at the client's northern office, the presentation she had rehearsed in the bath, the week she came home and Femi had cleaned the whole house and cooked and said nothing was wrong. She was 200 miles away at 8:15 on that Tuesday. She was in a hotel breakfast room eating cold eggs and reading her own slides.
So she looks at the witness name, and it is Ronke. Ronke Adebawala. The handwriting she has now seen twice in 12 hours, once on a hospital form and once on a note Ronke left on the canteen table with her phone number on it. The same slanted R. And that is the moment the floor goes, because it means Ronke did not stumble across this. Ronke did not find it and bring it to her out of conscience. Ronke was in the room. Ronke held the pen. Ronke wrote Bisi's name on a decision about Bisi's husband's body at 8:15 on a Tuesday while Bisi was in Manchester being brilliant.
And here's the part that undid me when I sat with this. Bisi rings her. Standing in that corridor, one hand on the wall, she rings Ronke and says one word, which is why. And Ronke does not deny it, does not soften it, does not perform. She says, he asked me to. And then she tells her the rest, and the rest is worse than the forgery. Femi did not ask her in a panic. He did not ask her the morning of. He asked her 3 days before. And on the morning itself, they sat in that car park, in her car, and he made her rehearse the reason with him. Twice. Because the form has a box for why a procedure is being declined, and he needed her to be able to say it out loud without hesitating in case anybody asked her at the desk. Family circumstances. Say it like it's boring, he told her. If you say it like it's boring, nobody follows up.
He rehearsed a lie about his own life like it was a presentation. And Bisi asks the only question left, which is why May? Why that month? Why did it have to be that month, Ronke? And Ronke says the sentence that turns this entire season backwards. She says, because May was the month the clinic had you booked in.
May was the transfer. May was the appointment they had waited 14 months for. And if Femi had gone in for that surgery, there would have been a recovery. And after the recovery, there would have been a treatment plan, and the clinic would have had to move them. And moving them meant the back of a waiting list. And the back of a waiting list meant next year, and Bisi is 39. He did the maths in a car park with his half-sister, and he decided that his body could wait, and their last chance could not.
And you want to call that romantic. I know some of you listening want to call that romantic. But we have to go back now because that decision was not made in May. That decision was made 2 years ago in a flat in Croydon, in a room Femi has never described to anybody. After Timmy was born, Bisi lost 11 weeks. And I want to be precise about what I mean because she is precise about it. She does not remember them. She has photographs of that period and she does not remember taking them or being in them. She remembers a health visitor's shoes. She remembers the sound the kettle made. She remembers standing at the top of the stairs at 3 in the morning holding a baby she loved and feeling absolutely nothing and being more frightened by the nothing than she had ever been by anything in her life.
And nobody used a word. That is what gets me. Not one person in that house or that family or that church said the word. Her mother said, this is the season, it passes. Her aunt said, she's just tired, she's a strong girl. Femi said nothing at all because he was 29 and terrified and had been raised to believe that a man handles it. And at 5 weeks, Bisi got up, put on a blazer that did not fit yet, drove to the office, and did a full day. And everybody, every single person told her she was incredible.
She got a card. There was a card on her desk. Welcome back, Superwoman. She kept it. It is still in her drawer. And I want every woman listening to hear this because this is the whole episode in one sentence. She was not strong. She was running. There is a difference between recovery and escape, and we have spent about 40 years congratulating women for the second one because it looks so much like the first one from the outside.
I'll push on that in a minute, but let me stay with Femi, because Ronke tells her one more thing on that call. Femi came to her flat during those 11 weeks, twice, sat on her sofa with his coat still on and said, I don't know who she is anymore. And Ronke, who is the only person in his life who ever told him the truth, said, then tell somebody. Tell her mother, tell the GP, tell her. And he said, if I say it out loud, it becomes real. And if it becomes real, she'll never forgive me for saying it. So he swallowed it and he carried it for 2 years, and it curdled into a promise he made privately and never told her about. She will never be put in a position like that again. She will never have to choose between me and this.
Which sounds like love and is actually a man deciding alone in silence that his wife is too fragile to be told the truth about her own life. He did not protect her from a choice. He protected himself from having to watch her make it. And Bisi understands this standing in a hospital corridor at 9 in the morning with a photocopy in her hand, and she does what she always does, which is she gets in the car.
She drives to the clinic, 40 minutes. She does not ring ahead. She walks into the reception of a fertility clinic she has cried in 11 times, and she says, I'd like to close our file, please, today. And she says it calmly, because closing it herself is the only piece of this she can still hold. If she cannot choose whether her husband has surgery, she can at least choose to end the thing his silence was protecting. That is the logic of a woman who has run out of decisions to own.
And the receptionist starts pulling it up, and she is chatty. She is lovely. She has no idea what she has walked into. And she says, oh, before you do that, I should just check with you about the storage because you've got one remaining. One embryo. 1. And Bisi says, yes, I know. And the woman says, and obviously you'll want to talk to the consultant first, given you're back in.
And Bisi says, sorry, back in?
And she turns the screen. And there it is, an appointment. Thursday, 9:40, consultant review, transfer discussion, booked 8 days ago. Not 2 years ago, not in May. 8 days ago, which is 4 days before Femi went into hospital and 3 days before Ronke walked into that canteen. And it is booked in Bisi's name. Her full name, her date of birth, her mobile number, all correct.
And she did not book it. And that is where we have to leave it because somebody put her name on the last chance she has left, the same way somebody put her name on a form in May. And there are only so many people in this story who know both her date of birth and where the clinic is.
What a conversation. Let's bring it all back together.
Go on then. Say the thing you've been holding since the car park.
Here it is, and I will not soften a syllable of it. What Femi did is theft, not sacrifice, not devotion, theft. He stole a decision out of his wife's hands and he wrote her name on the receipt. And I am going further. Every single time a man decides what a woman can handle, it is control. It does not matter how tender the motive is. It does not matter that he cried in his sister's flat with his coat on. A love that requires you to be kept unaware is not love. It is management. And the 11 weeks are the proof, because for 2 years he had information about her mind that she did not have about herself, and he sat on it. And that is not a husband, that is a custodian.
I'll give you the theft. The forgery is indefensible, and the choice about May was hers to make even if she'd made it exactly the way he wanted. That's the kernel, and it's a real one. But I am not coming with you on the sweep, Jasmine, because every time is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and it is doing it for free. Femi is not the confident man who decided his wife was weak. He is the frightened man who stood at the top of those stairs behind her at 3 in the morning and had no word for what he was looking at, and no one in that house had a word for it either. You want to call that control? I'd call it illiteracy. He was not fluent in what was happening to her, and neither was her mother, and neither, for 11 weeks, was she.
So we excuse him because nobody taught him vocabulary.
No, we hold him responsible for the silence and we stop pretending he invented it. And I'll say the harder half since we're saying quiet parts out loud. Bisi made a unilateral decision too. At 5 weeks, she got in a car and went back to work without asking anybody, without telling her GP, without saying to her husband, I am doing this because I cannot be in this flat for 1 more hour. She decided what he could handle as well. That marriage had 2 people managing each other in silence and only one of them has been caught. Femi's crime is that his silence left a paper trail.